Welcome to the 12th video in the series, and the theme is Nature Has No Labels. At first glance, this title might seem a little obvious. After all, we all know what a tree looks like. And do we need all the plants to have labels? Well, actually, that might help. The theme of this video becomes more interesting when you consider how many labels we need to get us through a simple journey to the supermarket. There are signs on every aisle, but we also need to read the small print on a label to check the nutritional information, study the list of ingredients, check the expiry dates. What about toxic and caution labels? Or even to follow instructions or preparation and storage information. And then there are maintenance and care labels for washing clothes, for example, or something far more important, like checking the daily dosage on a prescription for a pharmaceutical drug or a health product. So much essential information, and quite different from nature. So let's start with a basic question. Why do so many things in our daily lives need labels? The most obvious reason is that product labels make our lives safer, more convenient, and worry-free. They help us to make better sense of what we buy, use, and dispose of. So we have labels on almost everything we own. Toys, yes, for safety. Packaged food items, that makes sense. Interestingly, cosmetic and personal hygiene products are now legally required to have labels because they aren't simply cosmetic. The labeling has to offer information in two ways: about what the product is and what's in it, and also about what we should and shouldn't do with it. The Consumer Packaging and Labelling Act regulations define a label as any label, mark, sign, device, imprint, stamp, brand, ticket, or tag. It outlines 3 mandatory statements which must be shown on a label and specifies the manner and location in which the following statements must appear. The product's identity, that's what it is. The product's net quantity, how much there is of it. And the dealer's or manufacturer's name and principal place of business, who and where it was made. All for our protection. This guideline for labelling appears to be fair and the information to be important. However, if you were to stop at a berry stand by the side of a road selling wild blueberries or raspberries, you wouldn't find the same labels on the foods picked straight from nature. Blueberries look like blueberries and raspberries look like raspberries. And before we buy, we rely on our basic senses to judge if they're ripe or bruised or even overripe, just like all the other animals in nature. We also have a good idea where the fruit came from. But nature isn't always so consistent or obvious. Generations ago, we were more closely connected to nature. We had to learn to make educated assumptions and found ways to trust our judgment. Well, at least enough not to poison ourselves. Today, we are quite removed from nature. When we buy fruit in a supermarket, it will likely say where it was grown, which could be almost anywhere in the world. Whether it was organically grown or how it got to the store or the country may not be so clear. Has it been refrigerated for months? Who picked it? What were their working conditions? We have no real idea. But remember, anyone who has eaten ripe fruit straight from the tree will know how much better it is than when it was eaten even 2 days later. Thank goodness for all those fresh fruit stands. As consumers, we are somewhat protected. There are standards for farming and transportation, and increasingly for farm working conditions. These standards are challenged and revised regularly, and at some point we need to trust that the fruit and other foodstuffs in our shops is there legitimately, and that safety measures are in place to protect us, leaving us with choices to match our own preferences. And as Michael Pollan advised us in the food video, we should eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. Not surprisingly today, we need a lot of labels, and we get them. There are probably too many confusing labels related to environmental practices these days, but this too is very much a work in progress. In contrast to our supermarket shopping experience, when we set off in the morning to start the day, there are no set instructions about how we should go about it. There's no prescribed amount of driving we should limit ourselves to. We leave our homes, start the ignition on our cars, or better, get on our bicycles, take a bus, or even walk. And we begin our day, thinking mostly about what we're going to accomplish. We may have some knowledge of the bicycles we're riding. We might feel exhilarated when we walk. On the bus, we listen to our music, but we have increasingly less and less knowledge of our cars and how they work. At least with a bicycle, you can see what moves and what doesn't, what's wearing out, like the tyre tread or the brake blocks. But for a car, we rely on warning lights and the noises the car makes, as long as we can hear them, which is difficult when we're concentrating on our music or the news. So let's take a look at a common myth about cars. Cars should run in an idling mode for several minutes before being driven, right? Actually, cars now only need a few seconds in idle before they should be driven away. Idling is, along with speeding, very uneconomical when it comes to fuel efficiency. Who would have thought that? Cars are set up to use fuel most economically when cruising just around the speed limit, as they should be. But gasoline used to be much cheaper. There are now laws against leaving a car stopped in idle, say when we're paying for parking. With so much fuel use in idle, think of the global impacts of all the idling automobiles, say in those long Toronto commutes we spoke of in the transportation video. Just how efficiently are we using our fuel? Well, it works out that if you're idling for more than 10 seconds, you're probably better off restarting the car. But that could cause lots of delays and confusion and stress with lights and indicators on the dashboard. Today, the latest cars are automatically turning off at idle and starting themselves again, almost without our knowledge or permission. So instead of being in touch, we are allowed to remain ignorant and perhaps not even know that the car is saving us money while reducing global pollution. See, our various modes of transport are quite wonderful in their technological development and somewhat paradoxical. In a story called Jetman, Roland Barthes observed that the faster we travel, we lose our sense of speed. In a jumbo jet, we may be travelling over 900 kilometres an hour while we're eating lunch and watching a video. On a bicycle, 50 kilometres an hour can be quite exhilarating. Laying down on a skateboard, going downhill at only a few kilometres an hour, dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, can be somewhat scary. It's been suggested that if we want a sense of speed in a car, we don't need to pay many thousands of dollars for a Porsche or a Lamborghini. Simply take the windshield out of the average family car. Actually, please don't do that. The windshield is part of the car's structure, but hopefully you'll get a sense of the idea. But let's move on. In the earlier life cycle analysis video, we looked at how in the Earth's natural state, we don't apply a value to anything until we find a use for it or want to sell it. And then we place a value on it. But in a way, as we stated in the very first video, that's like selling off a business that's just gone bankrupt. It is the resources we claim we need and have use for that we put labels on and give value to. Mankind has viewed the physical world, including plants, animals and landscape, as products of the earth, as a commodity. Now, we don't see too many signs on a river saying, unique aquifer, relied upon by 500,000 people for fresh water daily. Irreplaceable. Please respect it in every way. No. We just see rivers and streams, and often a little too much pollution. And anyway, rivers are always being topped up with clean, fresh water, right? Water actually can be quite confusing in itself. It's an amazing molecule. It's useful as a vapor, as a liquid, and as ice. But sometimes water can be a bit of a chameleon. It can be completely transparent, yet still be sterile and unable to support life. With water in a lake, we want it to be clean enough to be healthy, yet dirty enough to be happy. So benefiting from such a wide array of natural resources, our progress and development due to ingenious industrialization has encouraged us to continue to buy new things as we progress from survival to safety to convenience to comfort and to luxury, to live in the lap of luxury. Interestingly, many of the luxuries of yesterday have become the necessities of today. TVs, toasters, washing machines, cars, smartphones. What about boats? And more land and property, and even vacation homes. The implication is that owning expensive things will increase your net worth or value, thus taking the first step up the social ladder and enhancing your social status. These trends are still with us today. And if this is to continue, we're going to have to rethink some things, which is why we're trying to unravel the layers of our global onion. Today, we witness nature very much from a distance, well, perhaps apart from the weather. And many so-called natural products are completely altered from their natural physical state. For example, You may have seen an orange juice commercial on TV in which a woman reaches her hand deep into a grocery store refrigerator, only to see her hand come out the other side to pick an orange from a tree. She pulls her hand back to reveal her pulling out a carton of orange juice, which she then places into her shopping cart. This commercial demonstrates precisely how far we've come from nature. It's far more convenient. And who wants to pick, peel and juice an orange anyway? Who has the time for that these days? Now, an orange and an apple don't have a list of ingredients on them, like the juice container, but they contain a lot of good stuff. Perhaps we might one day see a label that says, may contain pits, should be or could be a slight choking hazard. Today, many connections to nature are masked by marketing and distribution practices, and this is where life cycle analysis can be beneficial. To help us examine the implications and the true costs to the planet of how the processes involved may neglect or take into account long-term thinking. Life cycle analysis can be a useful tool to better our understanding of any product's ecological or environmental footprint. That's how much energy, resources and impacts the creation and the use of that product is having. And also, what will be the implications when it's disposed of. Today, our amazing electronic communication devices are far from being a natural product. Perhaps one day we'll be able to feel equally good about an Apple computer and a locally grown apple, for very similar reasons. And they wouldn't even need labels. On a completely different note, imagine you're at home watching the television and the weather network declares a lightning storm is approaching. The chances are that it won't affect you until perhaps lightning hits a power line, disabling your electricity, leaving you without power, light and heat. Only then will you react and wonder what to do. Many years ago, when power outages were more common, we had candles and fires in the hearth and toasting forks for toast, and even a simple lamp or flashlight. We could cope. The more we remove from nature, the more we are cosseted and comforted, and thus we're able to cope in a disaster, or even just a sudden change. But no one wants to go back to basics. So is there some way that we can maintain a sense of connection? How can we reclaim a connection to the natural world and live harmoniously with the environment while taking advantage of all the wonderful developments that have marked our progress? Is it enough to check labels and monitor what we buy? Probably not. But we could make some personal decisions to, say, shop locally at farmers markets, or even better, grow some of our own fruit and vegetables. Now, we couldn't grow all of it, and certainly not throughout the year, but we would at least get a better feel for what fresh food really is, if we were simply to grow our own herbs, for example. The importation of foodstuffs is inevitable in many parts of Canada, and that would be equally true for all seasonal foodstuffs. The sensible reality would involve a sense of balance, and as Joni Mitchell suggested, give me spots on my apples, but leave me the birds and bees, please. And for all the stuff we can't grow, we need the labels, trusting that we're being protected and not fooled by dubious green or healthy promises. Empowering consumers to make ethically informed consumption choices, perhaps even with a renewed sense of smell, will probably help a lot. David Suzuki was once told by a friend of his who lived in downtown Toronto about a recent camping holiday by a lake. His friend said that it was great to get away from it all. David replied that he was actually getting back to it all. Sitting on a beach at sunset is primal. Earth, air, fire and water, reconnected. We'll see you next time when we'll be considering some Aboriginal perspectives.